Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to my NFL prediction videos for the NFL playoffs. I am your host, Matt. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are in this great world. Today, it's Friday, January 27th, and we are ready to do some predictions on the AFC and NFC Championship game. So we're down to 4 teams left in the playoffs. We have 3 games left to go until obviously the season's over. One team will be left standing. Who will it be? Will it be my Kansas City Chiefs? Will it be the Bengals? Will they win their first Super Bowl title? Will the Eagles win their second title in 6 years? Will the who's the other team? My goodness gracious, the 49ers. I can't even believe that I did that. The 49ers looking for their 6th Super Bowl title in franchise history. Now, they haven't won one in a long time. It's been a hot minute. Steve Young back in, what was it, 1994? I believe was the last time that they won a Super Bowl. So it's been a long drought for them. Obviously, the Bengals have not won a Super Bowl ever. They've been in it twice, both against the 49ers. And the 49ers won both games, 82 and 1988. So what happens in this upcoming weekend? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to give my thoughts, going to give my opinions on the games. Now, I'm going to go in order. Oh, this is interesting. Let's go ahead and switch over here. I thought the Chiefs-Bengals game was the early game. They've switched it. Am I mistaken? This was originally... Okay, whatever. I guess the Chiefs. I guess they're going to be playing at night. Let me blow this up a little bit here. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm going to talk about the games in order. So we're going to talk about Eagles and 49ers first. So just a few things to get out of the way before we get started here. Thank you for joining this broadcast. Thank you so much for finding my channel here. If you're a Kansas City fan, which most of the people I think find this through my Facebook page, probably not so much for the YouTube algorithm yet. Still trying to crack that algorithm. But I do post a lot of things regarding the NFL playoffs. We're going to do some Madden simulations tonight, and on these 2 games. And then once the football season's over, I'm going to switch over and start doing some more Royals stuff for all of my Royals fans here and the folks that have been starting to follow me through the Kaufman Corner podcast that Seren Petro and Randy Gisarelli do. So I know there's a handful of folks out there that have started following me from the chat sessions that we've been having. So thanks for those who've been following there. But there's a lot of things I want to talk about with the Royals and some of the transactions they've made recently. Some of them I really like. Some of them I've been scratching my head on, and then kind of breaking down the roster. Secondarily, there's a lot of my subscribers here also found my channel through various video game content. I do want to take just a second to talk about that real quick. If you don't want to do that, I am putting chapters down here in time marks in the video. So if you want to skip ahead to the actual NFL talk, you could skip ahead for the next couple minutes. That's not going to offend me. But if things like that do interest you, and you want to check out some of my long plays I've done on some various games and some various franchises like Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, Horizon Zero Dawn, I do encourage you to check it out. And one of the things that really excites me is the Horizon Zero Dawn series is coming to Netflix and here in a couple years. They've announced it. I don't know if they've casted it yet, but I know that they're looking for a cast. And I think it's going to follow most of the information, most of the story from the first game, the one that released in 2017. If that interests you, it's a really, really interesting story, very original story, post-apocalyptic future. It takes place 1,000 years in the future, but it's, humanity has returned to kind of a hunter-gatherer society, so to speak. And so it's the mystery of what happened and unraveling that. I have a playthrough, and I'll put it in the description down below, the link to the playthrough, where I edited down an entire playthrough and made it look like a Netflix series. So, there's some gameplay in it, but it's like 75% cinematic. And so I do encourage you to check that out if that interests you. So if you like movies, like I have got a former coworker, Kelly, and her husband, Ken, they're big movie buffs. If that interests you, I think people like Ken and Kelly and people like them who like movies, like TV shows, I really encourage you to check out that series. Just give it a try. And I know folks like my parents' age in their 60s. They're the thing they like to watch series, on Netflix or Hulu or Paramount or whatever. I encourage you to maybe step outside the box and give this video series a chance that I put together. It took me a long time, a lot of painstaking editing to it to edit out like the dialogue wheels during the speaking scenes. Because I wanted to make it look as much like a TV show as possible. So anyway, if that interests you, please check it out. So now on to the NFL content. So let's go ahead and start with the 49ers and Eagles. The 2 o'clock game here. Eagles 14-3, the number 1 seed. The 49ers 13-4. They are the number 2 seed in the playoffs. So we have the 2 best teams in the NFC. And I think, honestly, even though the Chiefs are the 1, the Bengals are the 3, I think we have the 2 best teams in the AFC as well. So I think we have the 4 best teams here, which doesn't happen too often in the NFL, where I think the 4 best teams make it to the conference championship weekend. But we have that this year, and I think that's why you've seen the betting lines reflected as such. Right now, Eagles 2.5-point favorites. Right now, the Chiefs are a point favorite. We'll talk about the Chiefs line and how that has moved when we get to their game. The Eagles, 2.5-point favorites over the 49ers. So let's talk about how the Eagles got here. First of all, the Eagles remind me a lot of the Buffalo Bills when the Bills started their ascent in the AFC under Josh Allen. Last year, the Eagles were the 7th seed, facing off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think Tampa Bay was, obviously towards the end of their run, obviously they were the defending Super Bowl champions last year. Tom Brady was still an effective quarterback. And they really blew out the Eagles. They had a 31-0 lead, and then the Eagles came back, and I think they scored 16 points. I think they had 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions. I know they scored 16 points, I believe. It ended up being like a 14 or 15 point margin, but it wasn't really that close. It was 31-0 at halftime. And I thought maybe, and I relate that game last year to kind of maybe Buffalo making it in the playoffs in 2019. I think they were they were the 5 seed because they played the 4 seed in the first round. They played the Texans, and that was a dog of a game. And they played really poorly. Josh Allen played poorly. And similar last year, Jalen Hurts did not play that well. It was really, really hounded by Tampa Bay's defense. And I'm not going to say they made the playoffs a year early. They deserved it. They were the 7th seed, albeit that's the last seed in the playoffs. But they were overmatched by a superior team. And then the following year, same thing with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills went 13-3 and were the 2 seed. Yeah, they were the 2 seed in the playoffs that year and ended up losing in the conference championship game to the Chiefs. They may have been the 3 seed. I can't remember, but they were 13-3 when the Chiefs were 14-2. And then this year, the Eagles 14-3, but they were the number 1 seed. And the rapid development of what happened with Josh Allen from 19 to 20 is the same thing that's happened with Jalen Hurts from 21 to 22. And now that being said, Jalen Hurts he doesn't have the passing numbers, but he's got a superior team than the 49ers here. The Eagles defense, they set an NFL record for sacks this year. They have 4 guys that are 10 plus sacks. They can rush the quarterback from any direction. They don't have to blitz because their defensive line is so good. And that's a scary proposition going up against a rookie quarterback in Brock Purdy. At least a scary proposition for the 49ers. One of the things that the 49ers really need to do here is to get Brock Purdy in positions to succeed where that pass rush from the defensive line and their defensive ends is negated. How do you do that? You got to get quick passes. You got to run draw plays. And you got to look for misdirection to get those guys in space to where they don't know. Those big guys, they really make their money, make their bucks by leaning on the other guys and using their power and their physicality against the other person. When they're in space, they're less effective. They're not linebackers. They're not safeties. And so the 49ers need to spread them out, and they need to take advantage of their own playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm not going to count Brock Purdy as a playmaker. I think Brock Purdy as a rookie going up against a team like this is in for a long, long afternoon. No rookie quarterback has led his team to the Super Bowl. It's never happened. Now, some people say, well, Joe Montana, he was a first-year quarterback when he led him in 1982. Well, yeah, that was Joe Montana's 3rd year. Yes, it was his first year starting. He led them to the Super Bowl, but he was not a rookie. So again, rookie quarterbacks have never been to the Super Bowl, and so Brock Purdy's gone as far as any rookie quarterback ever has, and I think this is where it's probably going to end for him. As we saw last week when they played a really solid Dallas defensive front. Purdy didn't do anything to lose the game, but he didn't do anything spectacular either, and the 49ers offense really struggled. But they had enough plays, and of course the miraculous, just the incredible catch by George Kittle that I still am just amazed at. I mean, that guy is an unbelievable athlete, tremendous tight end, George Kittle. And he's a talker too, which I'm not a big fan of that, but he seems to be a pretty good guy. We got the 49ers, I think, are going to have to come up with clever ways to put their offense in a place to succeed against a much superior defense than even what they saw last week. Now, Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in the game. I would put him right up there with Andy Reid, maybe just a step below Andy Reid, but I think Andy Reid's at the top, and he's one of one. And I think you have every argument to put Kyle Shanahan at number 2. What he was able to do this year with the quarterback position, obviously Trey Lance going out, and I think it was the second week with the broken leg. But Jimmy Garoppolo is not a good quarterback, but he made Jimmy Garoppolo look pretty decent. And he's made Garoppolo look decent his entire time there. Not great, but decent enough. And I think Garoppolo is a poor quarterback. And he was able to scheme enough that the last pick in the NFL draft last year, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick of the 7th round, where he has looked like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he is, but that's what Brock Purdy has looked like. As for this game, the Eagles have better skill positions. They when I say better skill players or at skill positions, it sounds weird to say that, but I like they have a more traditional running style. McCaffrey is a dual threat for the 49ers. But the running backs for Philadelphia, and then the combination of Jalen Hurts, also the threat to run, nearly 800 yards rushing this year. I think A.J. Brown is the best wide receiver on the field. He's better than Brandon Ayuk. He's better than Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel is a tremendous dual threat, where he can catch the passes, he can catch the balls, but he can also run. But when you look at Samuel's numbers this year, and I think he was out for a couple games this year with an injury, but his numbers don't jump off the page this year. I mean, he doesn't do as much this year as he's done in years past. I like the skill players of Philadelphia just a little bit better, even though San Francisco has a tremendous cast of players. I just think A.J. Brown adds a different element to that offensive attack for the Eagles. I mean, look what A.J. Brown was able to do with Ryan Tannehill. He made Ryan Tannehill, and he was the one responsible for Ryan Tannehill getting that big contract, which really has been now an albatross around the neck of the Tennessee Titans franchise. Because without any legitimate receivers, Ryan Tannehill was awful. And of course, he was hurt and did come back and play. And then I said, they were going to not tank, but they were going to fall off a cliff, which is what they did. And they bottomed out, and the Jacksonville Jaguars took that division on the last week of the season. A.J. Brown is, my opinion, the second best wide receiver left in the playoffs. I think he's probably the third best wide receiver overall in the NFL. Maybe number 4. Yeah, I would put him number 4. I would put Justin Jefferson probably at 1. Jamar Chase number 2, and then Tyreek Hill right up there at number 3, and then AJ Brown number 4. Those 4 guys, you can make a case for any of them. I don't think AJ Brown is the best receiver of those 3. Those other 3, you can make a case that one's better than the other. But definitely they're all very, very dynamic receivers, but he's definitely the best receiver that's at least on the NFC side. I think Jamar Chase is a little better than him, but the Bengals have a much wider range of receivers. They have probably the best trio by far and away. How do I see this game going? I think the Eagles win this game. And The interesting thing about that, I saw a stat earlier this week. It was on Nick Wright's show. He put it out there, but I've seen it around other places as well. Um, when the championship games are less than a field goal, which has only happened 12 times since the merger. I'd say less than that, 2.5 points or less. So not a field goal, but 2.5 points. So basically means the team that's favorited, they just got to win by a field goal to cover the spread, which is incredibly, incredibly easy. I don't want to say, well, maybe easy is the wrong word, but you understand what I'm saying if you understand betting lines. At 2.5 points, it's really, really close. And of course, the lower it gets, like the Chiefs game, at 1 point difference, it's essentially a pick 'em. Um, I the thing that I saw that was really interesting about this, of the 12 times this has happened, that of less than three, not 3 points or less, but less than three, it's happened 12 times. Only twice has it been 3 points or less, the score. Most of the time, 10 of the other 12 times, it's been double-digit wins by one team or the other. I believe of those 10 times, I think 4 of the times the underdog won and 6 times the favorite won. So it's hard to predict. And I think the reason why it's hard to predict is because these teams are usually so evenly matched, but it usually ends up a ball bouncing one way with the team that, has the lead, and they end up tacking on points at the end. Or sometimes it's just a blowout. And honestly, I see that happening here. I think Brock Purdy is going to be absolutely dominated again. I think last week he was held in check. I think this week is when the wheels come off of his bandwagon, or of his Red Rider wagon. And I think the 49ers really struggle offensively. I think they turn the ball over at least 3 times. And I think the Eagles are going to look every bit of the best team in the NFC for a reason. Sorry, my nose itches like crazy right now. What does that mean? Does that mean somebody's talking about me or thinking about me? I think it's thinking about you. The ears, someone's talking about you. Nose, someone's thinking about you. So it's probably my mom. So, hi, Mom. Thanks for thinking about me. So I think that it's going to be, like I said, I think it's going to be an easier win. I see a 1-score game by halftime, and then by the end of the game, I see the Eagles winning by 14 to 17 points. To be honest with you, I'm going to put the final score 30. I'm going to put it 37-21. I'll put it by 16 points. I'll put it 37-21. My initial thought was like 34-16, something like that, but I think it's going to be something like 34 to 37 points for the Eagles, and 16 to 21 points for the 49ers, in that range. Obviously, that's going to be more than enough for the Eagles to cover the 2.5 points. The over under of 46. So if it's 34-16, that puts it on the over. So any of that stuff is the over. So my official prediction from just a straight prediction is Eagles win, and then I have the Eagles covering, and I have it going over the 46. All right, let's move on to the Chiefs and the Bengals. So if you followed me here from Facebook and you got my teaser where I talked about the worst 6-1 start to the playoffs ever, let's talk about the Bengals first. And what I mean by the worst 6-1 start ever, the Bengals have played 7 playoff games under Joe Burrow. They played 4 last year. 4 last year. Is it 6-1? Wait a second. Yeah, they were 3-1 last year, and they're 2-0. They're 5-1, not 6-1. Yeah, this is their 3rd game. They've played 6 games, not 7. Okay, so they're 5-1 the last 2 years. They were 3-1 last year, so right now they're 2-0 this year. Joe Burrow hasn't had what I could call a bad game in any of these games, but he hasn't been great either. Except you could say he was great last week against the Bills, but even then you could look at that and say the team was great and Burrow played a good game. I've been through this numerous times on the channel, especially last year when we were doing a lot of previews for the Bengals. I went through, and of course, when I went through every round of the playoffs last year on these same type of videos, look, I don't need to rehash what happened in every game, but I want to give a brief 30-second review of each Bengals game from last year. Wild card round, Bengals and Ravens, or Bengals and Raiders. The Bengals led the entire game. I can't take that away from them. They led from start to finish. Or at least it was tied, obviously, to start the game, but they were the first to score. They never relinquished the lead. The Raiders never led in that game. But the Bengals did get a touchdown after a whistle blew. Now, that happened in the first half. You could say, well, the Bengals probably would score on that drive anyway, because I think it was like first or maybe even second down. I don't know the exact down, but they were driving. So it's reasonable to assume that they would at least get a field goal out of that. Regardless, they got a touchdown out of it after the whistle blew, and the officials allowed it to happen. So I've been through the reason why that never should have happened. Even though people say, oh, well, they got the play right. The whistle blew, and when the whistle blows, players stop playing. Again, if you want that, I'll link that video down in the description below with the timestamp. You can go watch my rationale there. It shouldn't have happened. That being said, the Raiders were just an average football team, and the Bengals beat an average team, but they struggled in doing it. There was nothing they did fantastic to do that. The Raiders just played had a poor game plan. Then against the Titans last year, the Titans sacked Burrow 9 times, and I don't believe he fumbled at all of those nine sacks. And any competent quarterback would have beaten the Bengals that day. The game was tied at 16 with about 30 seconds left. The Titans were at midfield and driving. They needed legitimately another 10 to 12 yards to get into like a long field goal range. At the worst, they were going to go to overtime. But Ryan Tannehill inexplicably threw one of the worst passes you'll ever see, and it was intercepted and returned into field goal range for the Bengals, and they kicked an easy field goal and won the game. That is luck, okay? And that's luck, and that's just a bad quarterback making a bad play at a bad time. The Bengals were done. They were going to lose that game, and they won. Then against the Chiefs, they were getting blown out, and then Patrick Mahomes played the worst half of football he ever played. It wasn't necessarily anything the Bengals defense did. It was Mahomes going back into hero ball mode, and just completely short-circuiting. And his brain just completely short-circuited in that second half. There were plenty of opportunities. I detailed this last year. There were numerous open receivers all over the field in the second half of that game, and Mahomes just simply did not throw them the ball. It's games like that give conspiracy theorists fuel that NFL games are fixed. Because how does Mahomes not hit these open receivers over and over and over and over again? Especially at the end of the game. When 2 straight plays, one Pringle was wide open, the other Kelsey was wide open in the end zone. The Chiefs would have won that game. Again, the Bengals did nothing. The Bengals did nothing extraordinary to win that game, and then they go to the Super Bowl. Of course, they lose in the Super Bowl. We know what happened in the first round of the playoffs this year. Okay, the game was tied. It looks like the Ravens were going to take the lead in a 14-point swing when the ball was fumbled. And not just the fact that the ball was fumbled on the goal line, and if they would have recovered there, they would have been backed up on the half-inch line, potentially at risk of taking a safety when they took the field. No, the ball bounces right to a player who had his back turned to the play. He was in poor position. He was already beat, but it was like cherry picking in basketball. The ball falls right into his hands. Oh, let me just run 98 yards for a touchdown. Okay. And then, of course, they had played a complete game last week. Their only good game they played, and they blew out the Bills in a complete and utter destruction of the Buffalo Bills. 6 games, 1 solid game of those 6, and they're 5-1. So, what happens this weekend? Patrick Mahomes, as everybody knows, is got his ankle hurt against the Jaguars. And if you haven't seen video of him doing press conferences or the 10-minute video of him at practice on Wednesday and Thursday, then you're living under a rock. Because it's been parsed and it has been discussed to the nth degree on YouTube and on social media. It is the most talked about ankle in the history of the world. Patrick Mahomes' ankle up, in his status of his ability to play. Andy Reid said today in his press conference that Mahomes is going to start. Of course, we knew that. We knew he was going to play. I think his ability and his mobility, from what we've seen this week and the limited amount of what we've seen video from practice, the fact that he was listed as full participant, not as a limited participant, and the fact that we've seen the betting lines shift as much as it has, gives me more confidence as a Chiefs fan in this game. Now, I said at the conclusion of last week's games, when I was kind of doing my wrap up, of course, I didn't know the status of Mahomes' ankle, and I was seriously saying that I think that I'm probably going to go Cincinnati in this game. The more that this week has gone on, the more that Cincinnati has been chirping, the more that they've been disrespecting the Chiefs and, calling this Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead Stadium. Let's address that real quick. Joe Burrow has played one game at Arrowhead, and he won in overtime by 3 points in a game that he did nothing to win that game. It was all on the Chiefs self-destructing and beating themselves. And now they've renamed the stadium. Cincinnati players and fans have renamed the stadium Burrowhead. Okay. All right, let's put that one. Let's put a notch on that one. That's a stupid thing, Cincinnati players. That's stupid. Sorry. You know how long it took for us to rename Mile High Arrowhead West? It didn't happen the first time in this 16-game run, or in this 8-year run. It was just a couple years ago we started doing that because we've dominated that series. Yeah, you guys have bragging rights over Patrick Mahomes in the last 3 games, all by field goals, mind you, 2 at the gun, at the whistle, on tie games. And let's talk about these 3 games too. The Chiefs have led, of the 12 quarters, the Chiefs have led 9 of those 12 quarters. The Chiefs have held the lead in the majority of these football games, and the Bengals have come back in the third quarters, late third quarter, early fourth in each one of them, because the Chiefs have done enough again to hurt themselves. Kansas City has the better quarterback. Cincinnati has the better receivers. Let's break these down. Well, before we do that, let's go back to the line, because I brought that up and then I kind of moved past it. The line immediately after the games on Sunday, the line was Chiefs minus 2.5, which means the Chiefs were 2.5 point favorites. Immediately, all the public money, all the people that were betting early, all the emotion of that game when the Bills just completely self-destructed and the Bengals dominated them. And of course, they were using that as evidence. And the second thing they were using evidence is we didn't know anything about the Patrick Mahomes injury. All the money came in on the Bengals, to the point where it pushed it to negative 2.5 on the Bengals side. And then for about 5 minutes, the Bengals were 3-point favorites at, I think it was at Caesars, or it may have been I think it was at Caesars. Caesars is on here on the screen on ESPN. I don't know if it was Caesars, though, or if it was MGM. I know one of them put it for 5 minutes, had it as Chiefs +3. So it means the Bengals are 3-point favorites. And in those 5 minutes, they took just an enormous amount of bets on for the Chiefs. They took the Chiefs and the points, which basically means that the Bengals could win like they have been the last 3 times by 3 points. And if you put money on the Chiefs, you're going to win that bet because you have to cover the 3 points. It means you have to win by 4. So at +3, with the Chiefs were at +3, all the money was going on Kansas City. And they immediately put it back to 2.5 and down to 2. And then Wednesday happened. Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, when we started seeing Mahomes, we started seeing them talk more. We see him walking around. He's not in a boot. He's not favoring one foot or the other. Now, he's not jumping around. He's not running laterally. He's not doing a lot, but what we've seen is that he was moving around without much of an issue, without any issue at all, to be honest with you. Some people have broken down him walking up and down the steps in the, in the media room and like, well, did he do a little hop step there? Did he do a little skip there? Oh, he missed one of the steps because he knew it would hurt if he went down that step, by putting an extra foot down. I think people have lost their minds and overanalyzing how Patrick Mahomes walks. Okay. The bottom line is that when we saw that, not only was the money coming in on the Chiefs, but now the books, Vegas was moving everything to the point now where it's Chiefs -1. So it's gone from Chiefs -2.5 to Bengals +3, now Chiefs -1. So it's moved 4 points from that 5-minute stretch when the Bengals were 3-point favorites for 5 minutes. And now it's gone 4 points back the other way. What does this tell you? How can you parse this information? The bettors or the gamblers, they don't like variability. And the books, they want to get as much money. My nose. Come on, Mom. Stop thinking about me. The books want to get as much money in on these games as possible. And now with the Chiefs favorited, I think what you're seeing is a lot of worriedness in the books because they took a lot of money and a lot of bets when when the status was unsure. And now that it's clear he's going to play, what percentage is he at? We'll talk about that in a second. But the fact that it's moved this much back towards Kansas City away from that Chiefs +3 to now Chiefs -1, that's a 4-point swing. I think this is showing that there's a lot more confidence than right now on January 27th about the Chiefs winning this game than there was, 5 days ago. Especially even with me and the Joe Schmo out here in the Midwest. Now let's break down the position groups. And we're going to spend a little more time on the Chiefs Bengals here just because I'm a Chiefs fan and I want to break this down. Let's go group by group. Okay, quarterback. I'm going to say quarterback is even. I think if Mahomes is healthy, 100% healthy, no issue, I think Mahomes is the better quarterback. I would give it a slight lean to the Chiefs because he's going to probably be 75-80% of his normal self, at least from his legs. His arm's going to be 100%. I'm going to say it's a dead even. Okay. Running backs, again, I think with Mixon and Pirine versus Pacheco and McKinnon, they each serve their purpose. Neither team runs the ball a heck of a lot. The Chiefs do have a better running offense than the Bengals do. The Bengals have been largely ineffective most of this year running the football. The Chiefs have been effective when they've run, but they don't. But there are times when they stubbornly refuse to run the football. I'm going to give a slight lean here to the Chiefs over the Bengals in this regard. Offensive line, this is not a question. The Chiefs have the much better offensive line. But it's not so much matching up offensive line to offensive line. It's matching up the offensive line to the defensive line. So we'll get to that here in a second. But the Chiefs have a much superior offensive line than the Bengals. With the Bengals obviously having 3 players out and another guy hurt. I think this might be the game where, like the Chiefs in the 2020 Super Bowl against the Bucs, the Chiefs were largely able to scheme around their issues on the offensive line, but when they lost the next guy, when they lost Fisher in the championship game, they couldn't scheme around enough. I think this is a similar type deal with the Bengals. I think they were able to hide a lot of that in the snow, which Tim Grunhard, longtime Kansas City Chiefs Ring of Honor, has said that the snow is an offensive lineman's best friend. And there's going to be no snow on Sunday in Kansas City. And I think that's going to really work against the Cincinnati front, especially against the Chiefs' defensive front. Wide receivers, no question. Obviously, Cincinnati, much better wide receiver. When it comes to tight end, obviously the Chiefs, much better tight end than Hurst. Even though Hurst is a good young player, Travis Kelce is the best tight end in football. And it's not even close. Defensive line, I am going to give the significant edge here to the Chiefs. Obviously, Chris Jones is an All-Pro. Possibly he's up for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if he's going to win it, but he definitely is going to get quite a few votes. It's time for Chris Jones to earn his money in the playoffs. He's had tremendous playoff games, but he's never had a playoff sack. I think that changes this week. So obviously the Chiefs have an advantage there on the defensive line. Linebackers, it's probably even, probably a slight edge to Cincinnati. Nick Bolton is tremendous. Willie Gay's kind of taken a little step back, but Willie Gay is still pretty good in pass coverage. When he's covering tight ends, he's going to be really important on him on Hurst this weekend. Again, I'll give the Bengals a slight edge there in their linebacker coverage. Corners and secondary, I'm just going to throw them all in the one field together here. I think the Chiefs secondary is better than the Bengals secondary. Now, you may say, well, Matt, the Chiefs have given up the most passing touchdowns of any team in the league. Well, one thing you have to consider is that the Chiefs are in these shootouts, and the other team's going to be passing the ball a lot anyway. So that's you have to consider that as well. They're not playing 17 to 12 games. Obviously, L'Jarius Sneed is one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the NFL, and I think next year people are going to be talking about him as a top 3 corner in the league. Tremendous growth from him at the corner position. McDuffie was a first-round pick. He's definitely lived up to that. I would rate him as an minimum A- player this year. Tremendous season by McDuffie once he came back from his injury. And even the two, Brandon Williams and Jalen Watson, both very athletic corners. Watson has obviously made 2 of the biggest interceptions of the year for the Chiefs. The Chiefs are not a ball hawking secondary, and Thornhill's gotten some more interceptions lately. Justin Reed is a good hybrid strong safety. He's not the best though, but when it comes down to the Cincinnati secondary, Eli Apple is really he's the guy that talks the most, but he's definitely not one of their better corners. As a matter of fact, he is often torched. And so definitely I would give the edge to the Chiefs, the secondary. Cincinnati's got some good safeties, but I'll take Thornhill and Reed over them. Now, as it comes to kickers, McPherson didn't have as great of a season as he did last year, but he's still a really great kicker. Butker obviously has had his issues this year. He was dealing with his own injury issues with his ankle and with his leg. He was a career low 75% field goal make this year. Of course, all the drama regarding Chiefs former punter Dustin Colquitt and criticizing Tommy Townsend on his holds on extra points and field goals, which led to a pretty big argument on social media between Chiefs fans. I was of the belief that Dustin Colquitt shouldn't have said anything in that whole issue because all it did was cause problems and it caused distractions that didn't need to happen. And I just looked at it as a sour grapes type thing with the guy that you're criticizing, the guy that took your job. But when it comes down to actual punting the ball, Tommy Townsend's the best punter in the NFL. So, and that's not, and there's nothing you can say about that. I mean, Tommy Townsend is the best punter. And when the Chiefs are playing when they're playing field possession games, they have the best punter, and therefore they're going to have a slight edge there. Kick coverage, I don't know enough about either team's kick coverage. Obviously, the Chiefs had some problems with that last week, but most of the time this year they've been pretty decent on kick coverage. The biggest thing the Chiefs have had to deal with in special teams has been fumbling the ball on punt returns and just not giving the other team, a short field, which has led to so many touchdowns this year. So I'll give the edge to Cincinnati in overall special teams just because of what I've seen with the Chiefs and being a Chiefs fan, but I don't think it's as pronounced. And I think special teams gaffes are largely avoidable if you just play within yourself. So, and then of course, when I look at coaching, the Chiefs obviously have the advantage of coaching. All of these things together, the Chiefs have an advantage on most areas. That tends to go along with what I've said from the very beginning, that when the Chiefs have lost these 3 games to the Bengals, once in the playoffs and twice in the regular season, it's largely been because the Chiefs have beat themselves. Not so much of what the Bengals have done against them, it's what the Chiefs have done to beat themselves. Fumbling at inopportune times. not managing the clock appropriately, refusing to play the offense against the defense that they give you, which is what the second half of the championship game was last year. It was almost like Mahomes and Reed wanted to win that game 42-10 instead of winning just need to win by 1 point, guys. So the Chiefs have an advantage in most facets when you line them up, next to each other. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that. And they're looking at how the Bengals, when I say they, I'm talking about the national media. They're looking at how the Bengals beat the Bills. They're looking at it and saying, this was the team that we all thought would win the Super Bowl this year in the Buffalo Bills, and the Bengals went there and trashed, and therefore the Bengals must be the best team. The Bills were overhyped and awarded this position for no reason. All season, they were overhyped from the very first game. Now, they're a very good football team, but they are not the best football team in the league. But they were awarded that, and they were crowned that before the season started. So the perception is that Cincinnati's win last week was the best win ever, when really it was just a great win. And so how does this game go? I think Mahomes will be limited. I don't think you're going to see him doing a lot of moving pocket plays. But I see a very similar game to what happened in 2020 when the Chiefs played the Bills. And obviously Mahomes was out. He got knocked out of the previous game with a concussion when he was choked out. But the bigger issue he had that week was the turf toe issue, the broken toe. And he played with that broken toe against the Bills. And you could see it when he would run. He was running gingerly. He stayed in the pocket most of that game. And what happened? The Chiefs torched the Bills. Absolutely blew them out. And the Bills made it a little closer by getting like 11 consecutive points at the end of the game or something like that to make it a 14-point game, something to that effect. The Chiefs won that game by 14 points when they were up by 24, 25 points at one point. It was not a close game, and the Chiefs completely dominated Buffalo in that game. I see something similar here. And I think the added smack talk from the Bengals players and from the Bengals fans, and now there's been a little smack in terms of like Willie Gay said something to the effect of, they asked him a question, what impresses you about the Bengals offense? That was the kind of the summary of the question. There was a little more complex. And he's like, nothing really. Oh my gosh! Put it up on the bulletin board. Look, the Bengals have invented reasons to get offended. They got offended at a logistics reason for teams selling playoff tickets, ahead of when the games would even be known. Look, the Bengals were doing the same thing. They were selling championship game tickets for them against the Jaguars a week ahead of time. That's what teams do. You have to do it for logistics reasons. So, look, I think Zach Taylor is got a little Bob Stoops in him, and the fact that he invents reasons to be offended for his players, to get his players fired up. Look, you're playing in the AFC Championship game. If you're not fired up now, I don't know how much. I don't know when you ever will be. And one thing that I saw and I heard right before I started making this video was Chris Jones' comments, and Chris Jones referred to Arrowhead as Burrowhead. Very interesting. The Chiefs have heard it, and he didn't fire back. He didn't fire back at him. He didn't say it was stupid, and he mentioned it twice. And then he was just very calm. He's very collected. He's very cool about it. These guys have been disrespected all year. These guys, I mean the Chiefs. They've been disrespected all year. They were disrespected in the preseason. They were disrespected in the offseason. Many NFL experts predicted them to finish in third or fourth place in the AFC West. A lot of them have the Chiefs missing the playoffs, especially like the guy from NFL Network, Adam Rank, and all the folks like him at CBS Sports, Pete Prisco. These guys did not have the Chiefs even making the playoffs. And now that the Chiefs are here with the number one seed, it's more of the same. It's more disrespect, but this time by the opposing team. Now, they've earned some bragging rights because they've beaten the Chiefs 3 straight times. And I get it. You've got bragging rights. Eventually that streak is going to end, and I believe it ends on Sunday. Last year, I had an uneasy feeling about this game. For some reason, I just felt nervous about this game going up against the Bengals. It wasn't sitting right with me. And then when the Chiefs got out to a 21-3 lead, I was like, okay, I was wrong. Now, even though in my prediction videos I said I was very strong and I was very confident in picking the Chiefs, privately, I'm telling you, I was a little worried about the game. But when the Chiefs were up 21-3, I was like, I threw all that out the window. I was like, this is all right. We're going to coast from here. And then the second half happened, and the Chiefs didn't score. Well, they scored a field goal to force overtime, but then we know they lost. So what happens in this game? First of all, I think the Chiefs win. I said earlier this week I was probably going to go lean the direction of the Bengals. But as more things have come out this week, and the more that I have learned about the status of Patrick Mahomes, the more that the Bengals players have been chirping and the Chiefs have been silent and internalizing it. And I know that Frank Clark and Chris Jones are playing at very high levels right now. And I know that the Cincinnati offensive line doesn't have the cover of snow this week. And they're out 3 starters. And those starters aren't that great anyway. And yes, Burrow gets the ball out faster than any other quarterback except for Tom Brady, I believe. I think this is going to be hang on a second. This is going to be a game that I don't think a lot of the experts are going to see going the way they thought. I think it's going to be fairly close through a quarter. I think the Chiefs are going to come out and extend the lead by halftime. They're going to be up 10 plus points at halftime. And then I think they're going to run away and hide in the third and fourth quarter. Now, I will take a 24-23 victory by the Chiefs. You know me. I don't care. I don't care if the Chiefs cover or not. I don't care if they hit the over or hit the under. I don't care. I just want to see my team that I cheer for back in the Super Bowl. And I want to see them hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. At the very least, I want to see them hosting the Lamar Hunt Trophy on Sunday night. And they're going to host it. And they're going to hoist it as well. They're hosting the game, and they're going to hoist that trophy up with their founder's name on it. And at the bottom of the screen, what's it going to say? It's going to say Kansas City 45, Cincinnati 24. Chiefs win by 21 points. You think I'm crazy? You think this is nuts for me to predict the Chiefs win by 3? Wait, 45-21. That's 24 points. It's technically 3 scores. You think it's crazy for me to pick this? That big of a spread? I kind of did it last week against the Jaguars too. And it was on the way to that happening before Mahomes' injury. This team is focused like never before. And I don't know if the offense scores that many touchdowns. I think the Chiefs get a defensive touchdown in this game. I think they harass Joe Burrow to the point where he is going to have his worst game in the playoffs ever. Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl. It is going to be the Andy Reid Bowl. Chiefs and Eagles. You heard it here first. Chiefs will win this game. I don't care if they cover it or not. Of course, I have them covering the 1 point. I think win by 2 and cover that 1 point. But I got them way over the over. I got the Chiefs meeting the total points almost by themselves. I think the Chiefs get in the 40 range, and I don't think the Bengals get 30. You heard it here, guys. That's my official prediction. Think I'm crazy? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of my picks. Thanks so much for watching my video. Looking forward to this weekend of action. It's going to be 2 amazing games with the 4 best teams in the NFL for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a like if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you guys later. Go Chiefs.